His name was whispered in terror across the galaxy. Worlds fell silent when the deadly paws of Xanth, the apex predator, touched their soils. Now his claws click against cold metal, stalking the tunnels of space station Zeta-9, hunting a cowering Cranach engineer. Since time immemorial, Talaxians revered Xanth's kind as the ultimate hunters. His kind were living legends, silent, precise, unstoppable. Trembling whispers of his name echoed across 100 worlds, uttered by the dozen species he had culled. Fate held its breath as Xanth turned the corner, but instead of cornered prey, a creature stood boldly before him. Small, soft, pale, defenseless, a human assigned to repair a faulty airlock. Then the impossible. Not frozen with fear as he should be, the human reached out. Gentle hands caressed Xanth's muzzle, a soft coo escaping its mouth. Xanth's mind whirled, predatory instincts clashing with pure bewilderment. To Xanth, this was madness. To Peter Crawford, simple human instinct. Dogs were friends back on Earth. Why not here too? Peter saw not a legendary killer, but a creature to connect with. The galaxy itself held its breath, for in this moment the seeds were sown, not of predator and prey, but of an impossible friendship, human and Talaxian, the most unlikely of bonds. Yet bonds break, hierarchies crumble, laws bend and shatter. The tremors of this act of kindness will shake the very foundations of galactic order. The trials to come will reshape two souls, and with them, the fate of all. For Xanth and Peter, the journey has only begun, and the destination is a new age for the cosmos itself, where mankind and apex predator intertwine as allies, as friends, as the shapers of tomorrow. The universe watches and waits. The future dangles by a thread. Its fate rests in the balance between two kinds, suspended over the precipice of change. It began with a touch, human hand against predator's muzzle, deep in the lonely bowels of Zeta-9. In the days that followed, an unlikely bond blossomed deep within the metal bowels of Zeta-9. Xanth, the legendary apex predator, found himself drawn to this strange, soft creature called Peter. The human showed no fear, only a perplexing openness and warmth. Despite every instinct screaming to strike, to kill, Xanth hesitated. Curiosity stayed his claws. Peter, for his part, recognized something in Xanth's eyes, a glimmer of intelligence, a spark of something more than mere animal savagery. With gentle patience, he began to share his world with the predator. Videos and images flickered across screens, depicting the vast tapestry of human existence. Scorching deserts, frozen tundras, towering cities, all teeming with human life. Xanth watched, transfixed. These small, fragile beings thrived in every corner of their planet, adapting to the harshest conditions. They built, they created, they cooperated. The predator's worldview, forged by eons of Talaxian hierarchy, began to crack. Could there be another way? A path beyond the eternal cycle of hunter and hunted? But the galaxy was not ready for such questions. A message from Talaxian High Command shattered the station's uneasy peace. Xanth's fraternization with a lesser species was an unforgivable transgression. The order was clear. Kill the human, return for re-education. The old ways would not be challenged. When the Talaxian hunters came, Xanth faced a choice that would echo across the stars. Stand with his kind or fight for the glimmer of a different future. In the end, there was no choice at all. Claws and fists, predator and engineer, fought side by side against the enforcers of an obsolete order. Blood spattered the station's halls. In the aftermath, amidst the groans of fallen hunters, Xanth and Peter stood victorious, but at a cost. Xanth was a traitor now, condemned by his own people. Yet in that condemnation, a new path revealed itself. A path where human and Talaxian stood not as enemies, but as allies against the galaxy's ossified hierarchies. On the planet Cranach, a warlord named Zorgax smiled a crocodile smile as news of the unprecedented alliance reached his spies. The Cranachs had long seethed under the claws of their Talaxian overlords. In the union of predator and prey, Zorgax saw opportunity, a chance to fan the flames of rebellion, to fracture the Talaxian hegemony once and for all. As Zorgax's war fleet pierced the void, Zeta-9 lay directly in its path. The station had become a symbol, a flashpoint, the human and the apex predator who dared to dream of a different galaxy. Their fate, and the fate of the uneasy galactic peace, would be decided in the coming battle. On Zeta-9, Xanth and Peter looked out at the stars, knowing that their every action now carried the weight of worlds. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they had seen a glimpse of a better future, and they would fight to make it real. For in the forging of their bond, the cosmos itself had shifted. The old order trembled. A new age dawned. The first shots of the battle echoed across the stars. The fate of galaxies hung in the balance. And at the center of it all, an unlikely friendship that would reshape the universe itself. Alarms blared throughout Zeta-9 as Zorgax's war fleet loomed ever closer. In the station's command center, Xanth's claws tapped rapidly across holographic displays, assessing the overwhelming odds they faced. "Their numbers are considerable," Xanth growled, his ears flattening against his skull. Peter leaned in, studying the tactical readouts. His eyes narrowed, then widened with sudden inspiration. "The maintenance tunnels," he said, pointing to a schematic of the station's inner workings. "We can use them to our advantage." Xanth tilted his head, puzzled. "Explain." "Ambushes," Peter replied, his fingers tracing paths through the virtual maze. "We lure them in, then strike from the shadows. Your strength, my knowledge of the station, together we can even those odds." The apex predator's initial skepticism faded as he considered the strategy. It was unlike any Talaxian battle plan he'd ever encountered. "Clever," he admitted, a newfound respect coloring his voice. As Zorgax's troops breached the outer defenses, Xanth and Peter sprang into action. They moved as one through the cramped tunnels, Peter's quick thinking complementing Xanth's raw power. In a narrow passage, Peter whispered, "3 hostiles approaching. On my signal." Xanth tensed, ready to spring. When Peter gave a sharp nod, the predator burst from concealment. His claws flashed, felling 2 soldiers before they could react. Peter's makeshift weapon, a length of pipe, caught the third across the skull with a sickening crack. Their guerrilla tactics thinned the invaders' ranks, but the onslaught seemed endless. Pressed back into a maintenance hub, Peter and Xanth found themselves surrounded. Plasma bolts sizzled past, scorching the walls. "There's too many," Peter shouted, ducking behind a console. Xanth snarled, lashing out at a Cranox soldier who'd ventured too close. "We cannot fall here." Suddenly, a new combatant entered the fray. With a primal roar, a lithe Talaxian female leapt into the midst of the Cranox troops. Her claws were a blur of motion, carving a path of destruction. "Zara?" Xanth's voice was thick with disbelief. The female Talaxian fought her way to their position, her eyes locking with Xanth's. "I came to bring you to justice," she panted. "But this is bigger than our laws." A Cranox soldier lunged at Peter, energy blade humming. In a heartbeat, Zara made her choice. She threw herself between them, her claws tearing through the attacker's armor. But even as the Cranox fell, Zorgax himself appeared, his massive frame filling the corridor. "Pitiful," the warlord sneered, raising a cruel-looking weapon. Zara pushed Peter aside as Zorgax fired. The blast caught her squarely in the chest, hurling her against the far wall. "No!" Xanth roared, launching himself at Zorgax. The warlord stumbled back under the assault, buying precious seconds. Peter scrambled to Zara's side. Her breathing was labored, blood matting her fur. "Why?" he asked, cradling her head. Zara's eyes found Xanth, still locked in combat with Zorgax. "Our ways. They must change," she gasped. "Find others like you, Xanth. Forge a new path." With a shuddering breath, Zara fell still. Grief and rage warred in Xanth's eyes as he disengaged from Zorgax, retreating to Peter's position. The human's mind raced, formulating a desperate plan. "You need to go," Peter said, his voice resolute. "Find allies among the other Apex races. I'll hold them here. Buy you time." Xanth bristled. I will not abandon you. This is bigger than us, Peter insisted. The galaxy needs you, Xanth. Go! For a moment, Predator and human locked eyes. Understanding passed between them, transcending species. Then Xanth nodded, slipping away towards the docking bay. As Xanth's ship detached from the station, Peter turned to face the advancing Cranach forces. Armed with nothing but his wits and the station's systems, he prepared for his last stand. The fate of worlds now rested on the unlikely bond forged in the depths of Zeta-9. The void of space enveloped Xanth's ship as he left Zeta-9 behind. His claws gripped the controls, muscles tense with the weight of his mission. The vastness of the galaxy stretched before him, a canvas of stars and planets, where he would seek out allies among those he once considered mere prey. Hralthon 4 loomed ahead, its volcanic surface a tapestry of angry reds and smoldering blacks. As Xanth's ship pierced the ash-choked atmosphere, the harsh landscape below seemed to mirror the challenge that lay ahead. The Parner were notoriously isolationist, their ferocity matched only by their distrust of outsiders. Gorzash's compound rose from the volcanic plains, a fortress of obsidian spires. Xanth strode purposefully towards the main hall, acutely aware of the hostile gazes fixed upon him. The Alpha of the Parner sat upon a throne of hardened magma, his scarred visage a testament to countless battles. "Speak, Talaxian," Gorzash growled, his voice like grinding stone. "Why do you trespass on Parner soil?" Xanth's words flowed, painting a picture of galactic upheaval, of ancient hierarchies crumbling. He spoke of Peter, of human ingenuity, of a future where apex predators and their former prey stood as equals. Gorzash's eyes narrowed. "Pretty words," he spat, "but the Parner bow to no one. Prove your worth, Talaxian, or leave our world in pieces." The challenge was issued. Xanth barely had time to brace himself before Gorzash's massive form barreled into him. They crashed through the obsidian walls, tumbling onto the scorching plains outside. Gorzash was power incarnate, each blow threatening to shatter Xanth's bones. But where the Parner Alpha relied on brute strength, Xanth employed the tactics Peter had shown him. He used Gorzash's momentum against him, redirecting attacks and striking at vulnerable points. Blood and sweat mingled with volcanic ash as the duel raged on. Xanth's limbs burned with exhaustion, but he refused to yield. In an audacious attempt, he feinted left, then drove his claws into a weak point in Gorzash's armor, a flaw he'd noticed during their earlier exchange. The Parner Alpha staggered, shocked by the precision of the attack. Xanth pressed his advantage, driving Gorzash to his knees. "Enough!" the Parner leader roared, raising a hand in surrender. Panting heavily, Xanth helped Gorzash to his feet. A newfound respect glimmered in the Parner's eyes. "You fight with honor, Talaxian," he rumbled. "The Parner will hear your cause." With the Parner's allegiance secured, Xanth's ship cut through the icy winds of Kravos. The frozen world was a stark contrast to Hralthon 4, but no less deadly. Here, the Eras ruled supreme, their freezing breath a force of nature unto itself. Vark, the Araz clan leader, received Xanth with cold disdain. His serpentine eyes gleamed with centuries of pride and tradition. Yet as Xanth recounted Peter's ingenuity on Zeta-9, a spark of interest kindled in Vark's gaze. "A prey species capable of such adaptation?" Vark mused, his forked tongue flicking thoughtfully. "Perhaps there is more to your vision than I first believed, Talaxian." With the Araz joining their cause, Xanth's mission was complete. He raced back to Zeta-9, his heart heavy with concern for Peter. The station came into view, battle scars marring its once pristine surface. Inside, the corridors bore testament to Peter's resourcefulness. Makeshift traps lay sprung, the remnants of Cranach forces scattered throughout. Xanth's nose twitched, catching the scent of human blood. He bounded forward, following the trail to the command center. There he found Peter, battered and bleeding, but still breathing. Zorgax lay nearby, unconscious but alive. Xanth knelt beside his friend, carefully assessing his wounds. Peter's eyes fluttered open, a weak smile crossing his face. You made it, he whispered. Xanth nodded, his voice thick with emotion. We did it, Peter. The Talaxians, Parner, and Eras. They've all pledged to our cause. As if summoned by his words, representatives from each race filed into the room. They gathered around Peter and Xanth, a living symbol of their unprecedented alliance. Zorgax stirred, his eyes widening at the sight before him. This is an abomination, he snarled, struggling to his feet. You cannot undo eons of natural order. Xanth rose, standing tall among his newfound allies. The old ways are finished, Zorgax, he declared. We forge a new path, together. The Cranach warlord's face contorted with rage. This isn't over, he hissed, backing away. I'll see your unnatural union ground to dust. As Zorgax fled, Xanth turned back to Peter. The human's eyes were clouded with pain, but a fierce willpower burned within them. The battle for Zeta 9 was won, but a greater conflict loomed on the horizon, one that would reshape the very fabric of galactic society. The alliance forged in the crucible of Zeta 9 wasted no time. As Zorgax's ship vanished into the void, Xanth turned to the assembled representatives, his eyes gleaming with purpose. We strike now, he growled, while the Cranach are in disarray. Peter, still weak from his ordeal, leaned heavily on a nearby console. I have an idea, he said, fingers flying across the holographic display. Crack 7, it's perfect. The barren moon materialized before them, a desolate sphere pockmarked with craters. Xanth's ears perked up as he grasped Peter's plan. A trap, he purred, admiration evident in his voice. Days later, the Allied fleet hung in the shadow of Crack 7, a motley assortment of ships united by a common cause. On the bridge of the Talaxian flagship, Xanth paced restlessly. Beside him, Peter monitored the long-range scanners, his face etched with concentration. They're coming, Peter announced, his voice tight. The Cranach Armada burst from warp, Zorgax's massive flagship at its center. For a heartbeat, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then chaos erupted. Allied ships surged from their hiding places, energy weapons lancing through the void. Cranach vessels, caught completely off guard, exploded in silent blooms of fire and debris. Now, Xanth roared. Their ship rocketed towards Zorgax's flagship, weaving through the mayhem. A surgical strike team assembled in the launch bay, a mix of Talaxian hunters, Parnor warriors, and Araz infiltrators. At their center stood Xanth and Peter, an unlikely pair united by shared purpose. The boarding was a blur of plasma fire and close-quarters combat. Xanth led the charge, his claws tearing through Cranach defenses. Peter moved with surprising agility for one so recently injured, his makeshift weapons striking with deadly precision. They fought their way to the command deck, leaving a trail of unconscious or incapacitated Cranach in their wake. As the doors hissed open, they came face to face with Zorgax himself. The Cranach warlord's eyes blazed with hatred. You dare, he snarled, massive fists clenching. This abomination cannot stand. Zorgax's gaze fixed on Xanth, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. Think, Talaxian, is this truly what you want? To throw away eons of natural order for this? He gestured contemptuously at Peter and the assembled strike team. For a moment, doubt flickered in Xanth's eyes. The weight of countless generations pressed down upon him, whispering of the old ways, of the thrill of the hunt. Peter stepped forward, his hand outstretched. Xanth, he said softly, remember what we've seen, what we've learned. Xanth looked at Peter's hand, then back at Zorgax. In that instant, he saw the stark difference between the path of endless conflict and the promise of a new future. With deliberate slowness, Xanth clasped Peter's hand. He turned to Zorgax, eyes hardening. The old ways are done, he declared. We choose a different path. Zorgax howled in fury, lunging at them with terrifying speed. The command deck erupted into chaos as the strike team engaged the remaining Cranach forces. Xanth and Zorgax clashed in a whirlwind of claws and fists. The Cranach warlord fought with the desperate strength of a dying ideology, but Xanth had learned new ways of thinking, new strategies. In a final, decisive move, Xanth feinted left, then struck with lightning speed. His claws found their mark, and Zorgax crashed to the deck, defeated. As the dust settled, Xanth stood over his fallen adversary. There was no triumph in his eyes, only a weary perseverance. He turned to Peter, who nodded in silent understanding. In the hours that followed, the Allied representatives gathered in the shattered command deck. Together they began to draft the Zatavian Accords, a new vision for galactic cooperation. Xanth watched the proceedings with a mixture of hope and trepidation. He caught Peter's eye and gestured for him to follow. In a quiet corner, away from the others, Xanth spoke softly. "Our work here is done," he said. "But out there," he gestured to the stars beyond the viewport, "our real challenge begins." Peter nodded, a determined glint in his eye. "Zeta 9, he said, "we'll make it a symbol of everything we've fought for." Xanth clasped Peter's shoulder, a gesture that would have been unthinkable mere weeks ago. "Go," he said. "Build something new. I'll spread the word, world by world, soul by soul." As Peter turned to leave, Xanth called after him, "Remember, old friend, we may have broken the cycle, but the fight to keep it broken has only just begun." Peter paused in the doorway, a wry smile on his face. "I wouldn't have it any other way," he said, and disappeared into the corridor. Xanth turned back to the viewport, watching as shuttles departed for Zeta 9. The station gleamed in the distance, a beacon of possibility in the vast expanse of space. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the long road ahead.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.